workforce. And yes, this meeting is recorded, just to let everyone know. Workforce development by Mia Harvey, Social Security updates by Matt, and of course, upcoming events and announcements. Next. 2023 PIT point in time is underway. The PIT count is a statewide census count of people experiencing homelessness that provides an annual snapshot of the need within Delaware's homelessness response system. The night will start January 25th, and the day will be on January 26th. Important dates: volunteer assessment with state details and team contact information will be sent via email by today. On Monday, the 23rd, is the final volunteer assessment will be sent via email. And of course, if you are interested or need information, please contact one of the COC members. You are no longer able to volunteer after the cutoff period. So please make sure you volunteer and get all the information that is needed. Anything additional that you may want to add, Erin? You're on mute.
I said, nope, this has all the information on the next page. You covered it. Volunteer assignments will be sent out today, the next round of them before the final ones are sent out on Monday. And the rest of the information is here for you guys.
Okay, next slide.
So I just want to reiterate some of the information here before we move on. So again, this Friday is the cutoff to fill out the volunteer sign up form to make the final teams on Monday. We need everybody to complete their volunteer waivers. We'll have them available on site if you don't fill them out ahead of time, but it really helps us if you do that. So you can access those at that link there. Again, please contact us as soon as possible if you're no longer able to volunteer. If you have a specific request for your assignment or you have any questions about the assignments being sent out. And then we encourage everybody to review all of the training materials if they weren't able to do so or attend the training. They are all available on the 2023 PIT count page, and they were sent out via the COC's constant contact yesterday. So I would check your inbox for those. And any questions can come to me or Sophie or Felicia for the PIT count.
Proposal committee structure update for voting members only. Next slide. And so these are the fiscal year 23 COC voting members as listed. Next slide.
And I'll just add that these are the voting members that are not board members. Board members will still participate in this vote as well.
The proposal is to merge the Service Solution and System Performance Committee consolidation. The Service Solution Committee identifies gaps in services or service connections and develop strategies for enhancing or expanding access to these services for persons experiencing homelessness in Delaware. The System Performance Committee helps to identify and analyze gaps, evaluate performance, and recommend solutions for improvement of the Delaware COC homeless service system. Challenges that it's faced is high interest but low attendance engagement, difficulty recruiting active chair and co-chairs, hesitance around developing goals and moving forward on action items. The current status: the COC board approved proposal for advancement to the COC voting membership for review and vote at the January quarterly meeting, which is today. Next slide. The proposal benefits of this merger is where committee goals align. Service Solution plays an important role in overall system performance. New committee would now have a chair and co-chair, would allow for more frequent focus and meaningful engagement with the committee members, and new committee name suggestions. System Solutions Committee would be the new committee name. The next step, of course, we need to confirm, and Sophie, do we have a quorum?
I do not believe so. We do have a few people still filing in, but right now we are a little bit short. So currently it looks like we are going to be following up with an electronic, an e-vote sent out to all the voting members later today.
Okay, so as Sophie stated, we do not have a quorum to do a Zoom poll presently, so a email e-vote will be sent to the voting members. Erin, when would the timeline be?
Yep, so we would be sending it out by the end of the week, and it'll have all the information attached as well as the deadline for approval. And then once the proposal is either approved or denied, we'll notify the membership, and if approved, we'll also send out the update to the COC charter.
Okay, so we'll hopefully just give it like maybe a 48-hour turnaround time, maybe 3 days turnaround time to get the votes in.
Yep, all information will be included when we send it out.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. Erin.
Yeah, so aside from the suggestion and proposal vote for the combination to the System Performance and Service Solutions Committee, we are also going to be making another change to the committees this year, and that is a set committee schedule. So one of the so the reason that we're going through with this, and the chairs and everything have all talked about it, the benefits of having a set committee schedule for the year, similarly to the way that we have set schedules for the board meetings as well as the membership meetings. So it's going to really help provide some structure for the committee chairs and members to plan and implement committee goals and strategies for the year. Additional meetings can be scheduled as necessary. So if committees are working on trainings or special events, those can be scheduled as needed. The set schedule has been staggered between the COC membership and COC board meetings, so that people who are on multiple of those groups don't have to worry about multiple meetings a month. And it's also going to allow more time for both committee members and committee chairs to plan for and a plan to attend ahead of time for all of the meetings. Currently, we have all of them set up via Zoom, and any updates or changes to the committees will be sent out as necessary afterwards. So if anybody's meeting in person or anything changes to dates or times, that'll all be communicated in advance for everybody. So this is the 2023 committee schedule. All of the committee meetings will be taking place in March, June, September, and December. We really tried to make sure that at least 2 committees were meeting a week during the month, and then we allowed for the morning times and the afternoon times to try to satisfy everybody's schedules and make the committees as accessible as possible to the membership. This schedule, as well as the meeting and Zoom invites, will all be on our website and all of that good stuff, as well as the slides that are sent out afterwards so that everybody can have those on their calendars.
Super.
So how to access the committee schedules, there's a couple different ways. So again, the committee schedule, as well as the corresponding Zoom links and things like that will be on the COC webpage. So you can always access all of the updated materials there. If you have completed the membership drive this past year, and you are officially on a committee, then you will also be receiving the invite via an Outlook calendar invite, and the link to access the meeting materials and things like that will also be available there. If you are not sure if you're on one of those lists or you'd like to be, just reach out to Sophie or complete our membership form on the website, and we'll make sure we get you updated and on those lists. And then we will also have a public calendar via the Google Drive that again will have all of that information and stuff in it. So 3 main ways to access that, so that everybody is able to get on the meetings when they like. And again, the previous slide, we only have the system solutions committee here. This is planning in advance with the intention of that being approved. However, if it doesn't get approved via the e-vote, we will set schedules for both of the individual committees. But just in case, wishful thinking. And that's it. Does anybody have any questions about the schedule or how to access those materials? Okay. And I believe I am passing it over to Nick and Tony to talk about the Advocacy and Policy Committee schedule and legislative planning for this year.
Yeah, absolutely. So Tony is in court today, so you are all stuck with me. But this is going to be starting with legislative planning. And in case anyone here is thinking, how can there be much to do? Legislative session just started. I will tell you that there was an active and hopping housing committee meeting yesterday. So we are already in the thick of things. Just to flag a couple things that are happening, if you're wondering why you should get involved. Housing and manufactured housing committees in the House have now been combined, which means that we are going to be seeing things more streamlined. Right to representation, which a lot of you were involved with, is back. And we plan to be talking to people about their narratives, about the experience your service users are having, and how to turn that into legislative planning. We are talking about things like truancy and homelessness, rent escrow, source of income legislation. So if you look at any of those issues and think, I would love to get involved and talk about what I'd like to do with that, or if you're looking at this list and thinking, none of that is really what I'm working on, I would love to have what I'm working on the list, then I ask that you think about joining the Advocacy and Policy Committee and doing some legislative planning. Finally, we are having a debate between myself and Tony as to who is more adorable, his cat, Perlisses Grant, or my human, Bram Madigan. And so you to come and weigh in on these important topics. So hopefully we'll get to see you at legislative planning. Hopefully we'll get to see you at Advocacy and Policy Committee. And we'd love to have more of you join us. Thanks, Sophie.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. We really appreciate it. And we will again be sending out all of this information afterwards, so everybody has that. And I believe I am passing it over to Felicia to talk about our upcoming trainings for the year for the COC membership.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin. So good morning, everyone. The COC currently has a domestic violence and victim safety training coming up in partnership with DCADV, Hi Nick, and Classy. You guys will be hearing from both of these organizations and learning a little bit about trauma-informed care, victim-centered approach to client services, best practices on safely housing victimized clients, and planning protocols to serve survivors of DV. So this training is going to be mandatory for all COC project staff. All COC project staff will receive this, this flyer via email so that you can register directly, and it is strongly recommended for all ESG project staff. but the training is open to anyone who's interested in learning about the topic. The webinar will be held on March 13th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. And I will drop the registration link in the chat for everyone. And if you have any questions, please feel free to direct message me.
So thank you. Whoop, it looks like we had it in there twice. We are really excited about it. Again, we'll be following up with a bunch more training information for you guys on those for this year. We're still in the planning stages for some other exciting trainings for project staff coming up. But with that being said, I will pass it over to Rachel to talk about the rapid rehousing and PSH standards update.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Whoop, and I believe you're sharing your screen, right, Rachel?
I am going to share my own screen, so let me make my way to doing that. Give me 1 second. I apologize. It takes me a minute to figure out because it always wants this presenter view that I don't want. So give me 1 second if I can just. All right, is everyone seeing my screen? Does it look like the full screen?
Yes,
Is it like small? Can you see it okay?
looks good.
Okay, great, thanks. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about changes that have been made in recent months to the Continuum of Care's rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing standards. And next on the list for an update are our transitional housing standards. So many of you know this, but many of you may not, that as a continuum of care, we are required to partner with the emergency solutions grant jurisdictions in our state and with other, the voting members in the board of the COC to have continuum of care standards for how our housing projects operate in certain ways. So how people get access to them through coordinated entry, who gets prioritized, how they get prioritized, what the assessment is, et cetera. So that's a HUD requirement and something that we've been doing for many years. And during COVID-19, there were a lot of changes made to the way our rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing standards, the content of them in terms of who was getting access and under what conditions and why, for a number of reasons. And I won't go into all those details. I think we've talked about that a number of times, both in this setting, but also in other COC meeting settings like board meetings and other things. But coming out of, not that COVID-19 is no longer with us, but coming out of the really crisis mode of the pandemic, as well as having more information about how well or the system that we had in place was or was not working. There needed to be changes that were made for both of those reasons. And so in the fall of last year, so just a couple of months ago, changes were made to the rapid rehousing standards, and then more recently the permanent supportive housing standards. And they've both been, so the standards get reviewed by the centralized intake committee. Members are listed to the left. We're going to be working with the board to fill those vacant spots just within the next couple of weeks, so they will no longer be vacant. But we worked with the committee to review, make recommended changes to the board, and then the board, the Continuum of Care board has approved those changes. You can find both the updated, most up-to-date rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing standards at that link. Again, this PowerPoint will be made available to you after the meeting and will be in the Google Drive for the meeting's materials. So the main changes across both the standards is, and this is really most relevant for those of you who operate rapid rehousing and permanent supportive housing projects. I understand that for some of you, this isn't super relevant. The main changes are that as a COC, we're no longer using the VI spit out for assessment and prioritization. That has been the case now for, I think, 6+ months. So if anyone missed the memo, this is a reminder that the VI spit out is no longer being used for assessment and prioritization in our COC. Instead, we're relying on CMIS data and have developed a new assessment tool that's based on CMIS data that looks at the prioritization criteria that's listed here to help centralized intake staff determine housing referrals and prioritize people and families for available housing resources. And when I say housing resources, I mean housing resources that we refer directly to through a centralized intake that are made available through the COC. So it's not all housing resources in the community, it's the rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and transitional housing. So length of time homeless, number of shelter stays, their current living situation, whether or not they're chronically homeless, all of that comes directly out of CMIS. And the COVID specific risk factors were also removed from those standards. So this is the important note that I'll say anytime I get an opportunity to do so. Again, this is most relevant for those of you who are working in programs that enter CMIS or participate in centralized intake. No matter who you are, whether or not you participate in centralized intake, the data that you enter into CMIS is directly now having a direct impact on whether or not someone is being considered for a housing resource through the COC. So please, 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 whether they are entered and exited from your project, whether they're enrolled in your project on time, in a timely way, all of that, it impacts what's showing up when we're looking at making housing referrals. Whether they show up as being currently homeless and eligible for a referral, whether they show up as having multiple shelter stays, all of that is coming directly out of your data entry in CMIS. So this is just a reminder to make sure that you're doing that to the best of your ability. I know it's not always everyone's favorite thing, but it does directly affect people's access to resources with this new process. So as a reminder, the housing referral process hasn't changed much. The big piece is just that the VI SPDAT is no longer considered and is no longer part of the process. So a housing provider will request a referral from centralized intake when they have an opening or resources. Instead of looking at VI SPDATs, sending in VI SPDATs, all of that, centralized intake staff has a prioritization report that they can run in the system, and they run it at least once a week. And they use that report to determine the next priority household. They reach out to those households, they identify households who meet the priority criteria, who are eligible and who are interested in pursuing that available housing resource, and then they make those referrals to providers, both through email and in CMIS. The housing provider accepts the referral, contacts the household or client, and enrolls the client in the program. And of course, we know contact doesn't always happen. Eligibility may end up being a problem when the person gets there. If their situation has changed, which happens a lot less now that we're using this process than the former process. And you may need to follow up with us, or staff may follow up with you regarding access. So there are some processes around access. I'm not going to go into that level of detail because I know not everyone here is operating those programs. But this is just a reminder about the referral process and how it's changed and who's doing what as a result of the change in the standards. And that's really all I have for you today. Wanted to make sure everyone was up to date, aware of those changes. You can access the actual standards on our website. So if you are someone who is implementing these project types, please make sure you're familiar with the most updated standards, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. So next on the agenda, we did have a presentation with DHAP, but we are actually going to see if we can move something around a little bit just with everyone's schedules. Give me one quick.
So a couple of our presenters asked for the latter half of the meeting, and one of our earlier presenters is running a little bit late. So I believe Mia is on from West End Neighborhood House, and we were just going to see if she is able to present first. And if not, that's totally okay. But I know that she had slides that she was going to share about workforce development.
Yes. So give me one moment. We're going to see if Mia is able to. She will be sharing her screen today as well. And we will have all these materials also uploaded in the January meeting folder once this is all finished. So all materials will be available, whether they were included in our presentation or anyone was sharing their screen after the meeting as well. Just give me one quick one. Okay, so I do apologize. It looks like Mia is currently on a call at the moment, so she will not be able to present at this exact moment. Give me one quick minute.
Looking ahead to the COC application process this summer after hearing about the new area.
Alrighty, I'm going to real fast just touch base and see if we do have one of our other presenters that is able to hop on now. Give me one quick second.
In the meantime, I'm going to put a question in the chat, and y'all can have fun answering it if you want. Hopefully it's a fun thing to think about and to answer. I know a lot of you are doing work every day, whether it's behind a computer working on grant applications or in shelters working with people who are homeless, or wherever it is your work happens. It's hard work that you're doing, and sometimes it's fun to plan and it's fun to work towards our goals, but it can also be really fun to dream. And so I'm going to put a question in the chat. If you could wave a wand and change something about how homelessness is addressed in Delaware, what would that be? What would that change be? And if you feel especially moved by this question, I'm gonna say, feel free while we're figuring out what to happen next. Feel free to unmute yourself and share verbally. I know a lot of you are pretty talkative folks, so. All right, we've got more affordable housing, increased housing resources for people who are homeless. More affordable housing. More permanent supportive housing for people who are chronically homeless.
More appropriate housing for individuals who need diversified care and skills.
Thank you, Khadijah. Appropriate housing with appropriate supports for people's clinical needs. Supportive services, more supportive services and housing first. Better support for people in permanent supportive housing. Permanent housing for people with disabilities. Oh, I love these dreams. They can be a reality. It's like how I'm gonna. More options for families, including transitional housing and available units that they can afford. More funding for qualified staff to support multi-level needs. Absolutely. Federal money, more money, less problems. That's a good one. No more income to rent ratio. More focus on preventing houselessness. More regulations around housing development to ensure affordable homes are being built. I'll stop reading. You guys can read. Does anyone else want to share verbally?
Well, again, we do apologize, guys. We really try to make it set up so that it works with everybody's schedules. But the downfall is that one person needing to be late or one change kind of throws it all off. And I don't think we're in a position to present on behalf of all of our peoples.
Erin, if you have 5 minutes, I can give an update on panhandling and loitering if that's of interest and help.
That would be perfect. I would love if you could do that, Sonia.
That would be great. So we are still in the process of trying to find plaintiffs, but part of that process is that Erin has graciously allowed those of you who are going to be part of the pit count to also be asking people if they've had experience with panhandling and loitering and allow us to follow up. So that's really appreciated. We also in Newcastle are going to be doing in Wilmington a program at the end of January, which I will find the date in 2 seconds. I mean, end of February, which I'll find the date in 2 seconds for people. It's a Know Your Rights program, but it's going to be a friendship house. It's for people in the whole community in this whole geographic area. Anybody you know, they will get lunch. And they will get information about what goes on legally with panhandling, and we'll be asking them if they might have had experience and would we be willing to be a plaintiff. We are, and that will be February 21st at 1 p.m. at Friendship House, right across the street from Creative Vision Factory. We are going to also have one the end of February in Dover. And as soon as I have that date and flyer, I will make sure that it's passed out to everybody. And I am actively looking for a place in an appropriate place in Sussex to do a similar kind of program. So if somebody has the right place in Sussex that would have a lot of people who are impacted by panhandling and loitering would have access to and would be willing to work on such a program with me, please let me know. All of these programs will be in person. The legal representation for those who want a confidential one-on-one conversation will be present. And it is a way to both give people, clients who are in need of legal knowledge of what the laws are, as well as pass the information about the unconstitutionality of the panhandling loitering laws, and see if we could find a plaintiff. Thanks for letting me be spontaneous. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sonia. And if anyone has any questions at all about, if you're not familiar with the panhandling loitering issue in Delaware and the group of folks that are working together to try to address Delaware's laws related to that, Sonia would be happy to talk with you. So Sonia, do you mind putting your email in the chat? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that, Sonia. I did just get in touch with Devin. She is going to be finishing up her call and hopping on within the next few moments to present with us about the updates with DHAP. So she should be on in a few moments. Thank you again, everybody, for your patience. And thank you, Sonia, too, for that information. That was really helpful.
Hi, I'm here. I'm so sorry.
No, Devin, thank you so much.
I apologize. Yeah, I thought I was going on at 11:30. I'm like, I got some time. I can like settle some stuff up. I'm so sorry. Okay. Yeah. So hi, everyone. I'm Devin Manning with the Delaware State Housing Authority. I'm here to give an update on DHAP. So let's just jump right in because I know I have some time to make up for. I apologize. So you can just go to the next slide.
Devin, totally not your fault. Our whole agenda kind of has gotten mixed up today. So it is not your fault. Thank you so much for being flexible.
All right, thank you all for being flexible and understanding as well. So this information is probably a bit repetitive for some of you who have been engaged with the program for a little while, but I do think that the historical background is important and helpful. So we actually launched DHAP, the Delaware Housing Assistance Program, in March of 2020 as COVID was sort of shutting things down. So it started out as a very small scale program supported with just state and local money. It could provide up to $2,000 in assistance per household for rental and utilities assistance. And between March and August of 2020, we dispersed about $2.1 million in assistance on behalf of 1,300 households. Later in 2020, DHAP received a large infusion of federal funds through the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Relief Fund. So we were able to kind of scale up a bit and to increase the amount of assistance available to each qualifying household up to $8,000. And between August and December of 2020, we dispersed $12.7 million just in rental assistance, no utilities assistance, on behalf of 3,000 households. Then in March of 2021, I'm sure, again, a lot of you have heard a lot about this, but DHAP received a massive, massive infusion of federal funds with the establishment of the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So these funds have enabled us to provide significantly more support per household, up to 18 months of rental and utilities assistance for qualifying households. And ERA funds are federal funds that are made available through the U.S. Department of Treasury. So we can go to the next slide. So ERA came to us in two allocations or tranches, as budget-minded people like to say. So the first allocation was quite large. It ended up being $126 million when all was said and done. You've probably heard different numbers associated with this initial allocation. We had to do sort of some right sizing based on actual need and productivity and disbursement of funding. So the final allocation amount did end up being about $126 million. It was made available through the 2021 Consolidated Appropriations Act. And these funds were available to support rental and utilities assistance to qualifying households. Up to 10% of those funds also could be used to support expenses associated with the administration of the program. Obviously, it was a very large program with a lot of administrative capacity building that was necessary to stand this program up and kind of scale it up, get it up to size and scale. Initially, ERA1 funds were available or they were supposed to last until September 30th of 2023. In June of last year, Treasury notified us that they were going to be moving the expiration date for those funds up by a full year. So ERA1 is officially expired at this point as of September 30th of 2022. Those funds are no longer available to support rental assistance payments for households. Another thing that ERA established within the overarching budget, beyond just utilities and rental assistance and administrative expenses, it set aside this bucket of up to 10% for housing stability services as well. So we have been supporting that in Delaware through a couple of key programs that I'll talk about in just a moment. But the second allocation of ERA funds actually came through ERA2 through the American Rescue Plan Act. The ERA2 allocation is quite a bit smaller. It ended up being about $60 million, again, to support rental and utilities assistance, plus administrative expenses associated with the program, plus housing stability services. But just to recap, as of September 30th last year, ERA1 is officially no longer available to us, and we have fully shifted over to ERA2. Our understanding from the way that the statute is worded is that this ERA2 allocation is sort of protected. What we have in hand, we can keep. So like under ERA1, Treasury sort of made a determination that it was, they wanted to expire the program early. Our understanding with ERA2 is that Treasury cannot make that determination. It would require a decision at the congressional level in order to make any significant changes with regard to ERA2. So those funds, we can be reasonably assured, are ours to keep. So next slide, please. Again, those of you who are familiar with the program, you probably know all of this, but just as a kind of general reminder of the way the program operated, ERA funds as funneled through DHAP were available to support up to 18 total months of rental assistance. So that could be a combination of rental arrears, current and future rents due, up to 3 months future rent. It could also cover court fees and late fees from August 2021 on. Prior to August of 2021, landlords were not allowed to charge late fees, and court fees would have been waived during that time too. But as of August 2021, we were able to support the cost of court and late fees. It can also cover security deposits and first month's rent, again, in three-month increments. And it could also cover some utilities costs as well. So either utilities that are due to the landlord or utilities that the tenant is responsible for paying. So next slide, please. So this is the total amount of assistance that we have dispersed through ERA to date. Between ERA 1 and ERA 2, DHAP has actually dispersed more than $128 million in rental and utilities assistance on behalf of almost 24,000 cases. So cases are the number of times that a household applies to the program. So households can apply more than once. So if they received, say, 12 months of assistance on their initial application, they can come back and it's called a recertification. So they can recertify their original application and get up to 6 additional months to max out at their 18 months worth of assistance. So there is some duplication across cases, but among that almost 24,000 cases, it comes out to about 16,000 households that have been assisted through ERA 1 and ERA 2. Which is just remarkable, right? Like we've never seen a program, or certainly we've never administered a program of this size and scale before. So it's been a really, really extraordinary impact through these ERA funds to support DHAP. So next slide. So where we are today, as I mentioned, the decision was made to move the deadline up for ERA 1. So we kind of lost that allocation sooner than we were expecting. So we had to make some decisions when Treasury made that announcement that they would be, moving up that deadline to kind of tighten up our program eligibility requirements. So we paused the portal in September and October of last year. In October, we reopened and we introduced some new eligibility requirements. We lowered the eligible income limits from 80% area median income to 50% area median income. We also introduced new income documentation requirements that were a bit more stringent than what we had been requiring before. We also capped the rental assistance amount from $2,000 per month to $1,500 per month. And we capped the utilities assistance amount from $1,500 per month to $500 per month. All of those decisions were designed to kind of target assistance to the highest needs households and also to make our ERA dollars stretch, right? Like we want to keep this program operational for as long as we possibly can. And we had hoped that introducing these kind of stricter requirements might slow the pace of spending. That has not happened. We continue to process about $1 million in assistance payments per week. So ERA 2 funds are being depleted very quickly. And it was already a smaller allocation to begin with. So at the end of last year, we had to make a very difficult decision that it was time to actually close the DHAP portal to new applications and to recertifications of prior applications. Households can still apply on a very limited basis. They have to apply through one of our community navigators, and they have to fall into one of these 3 categories. So they must have an eviction with an actual scheduled court date. They must have a pending utility shutoff as evidenced by a shutoff notice or notice of termination from their utilities company. And they can also be a household who claims 0 income on a prior case. And then was actually directed to go seek assistance from a community navigator with providing appropriate income documentation. That is part of the new program eligibility measures that we introduced in October, is that requirement to go through a community navigator. And we are currently working through about 4,300 applications that are still in our pipeline. So we're still very much active, so it's, I think perhaps the word has gotten out that the program is closed, which is not entirely true. We still have a lot of cases that we're trying to work through. And we have about $20 million in rental assistance available to disperse. But as I said, we're dispersing about $1 million per week. So that gives you a sense of the pace of funding with what we have left to work with. Next slide, please. So even though DHAP is the assistance payments are being depleted at a very fast pace, there are, as I said, ERA dollars to support housing stability services. In Delaware, we have really focused on 2 primary programs with our housing stability services allocation. That's the Community Navigation Program and the Eviction Defense Project. So the Community Navigation Program was launched in January of last year. We worked with 15 nonprofit grantee agencies to basically support staff who would help people apply to DHAP, either to maintain their housing or to secure new housing if they were currently unhoused. And as I said, the community navigators are the only people who can currently submit new DHAP applications. So any eligible household who falls into one of those 3 categories on the previous slide must go through a community navigator in order to access DHAP at this point in time. And DSHA has also committed housing stability service funds to support staffing and related costs associated with the eviction defense project. So we are supporting attorneys, paralegals, eviction defense specialists, qualified tenant advocates, all folks who are out there working to help households avoid eviction and preserve their tenancy. And we've also supported some outreach initiatives under the eviction defense project as well. So as of now, the Community Navigation Program grantees are slated to receive support through June 30th of this year. At that point, it is very likely that DHAP will be depleted, and we'll need to kind of circle the wagons with the community navigators to see how they might be able to pivot to help ERA eligible households perhaps access other forms of assistance. And then the Eviction Defense Project is slated to receive support through the ERA 2 deadline of September 30th, 2025. So we will be supporting those staffing costs, attorneys, paralegals, QTAs through 2025. So the next slide has
Devin, there was a quick question in the chat. Melanie Brown said, where would you find a community navigator? Like, how would you access those resources?
Next slide.
I got it. Perfect.
So yeah, I'm just going to leave this up for a little bit. This is the list of all the participating community navigators who are engaged to provide services through June 30th of 2023. So just you can kind of familiarize yourself with the names of the agencies. And then just for a couple beats, and then actually on the next slide is our website information. So if you go to our website and you click on, so DE-CoC there is a space on the website called application assistance, I believe. So if you go to that landing page, then it has contact information, phone numbers, addresses, and websites for all the community navigation program agencies. So that is all I have for you this morning. I am so sorry again for being delayed. And I thank you for your time. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you again so much, Devin. If anybody has any questions, again, please feel free to reach out. And thank you again so much. That was really helpful. Alrighty. And we do actually have Camille joining us today from Delaware Public Health. She is on the call. Camille, are you ready for us now? We have your slides incorporated. She is coming to present about infectious disease prevention in congregate shelter settings.
Hi, everyone. Can you see me?
Yep, we can see you just fine.
Sorry, my camera is a little bit weird. So yes, I'm ready. And sorry about that. I had conflicting meetings at the same time, so I was trying to rush to get here, but we're ready.
Thank you so much. No problem at all. I know it's been a day of meetings like that for everybody all over the place. So thank you again for joining us.
Yeah, I think after the holidays that happens, right? In December, everyone is so laid back and I don't want to work. And then in January, it's like, meeting.
Yep.
But anyway, so my name is Camille Moreno-Gorin. I'm an infectious disease epidemiologist at the Delaware Public Health. I've been in this position for a couple of years, but I've been working for the state for around 6 years. I started as preparedness epidemiologist and sort of been working my way to infectious diseases, which is really my passion. So hopefully this presentation is helpful for your daily work. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me with anything that you need from us. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with a few definitions that I'm going to be referring to throughout this presentation. So I'll start with congregate setting. And for the purpose of this presentation, a congregate setting will be a setting in which a group of usually unrelated persons reside, meet, gather, either for a limited or extended period of time. Infectious disease are diseases that are transmissible from person to person, animal to person, or surface to person. And for the purpose of this presentation, a contagious disease is a disease transmitted from person to person. A fomite is just a fancy word for an object that can carry disease. And then a non-pharmaceutical intervention, it's a public health control measure that can stop the spread of disease, but it's not related to treatment or other medical intervention. Next slide. So in this presentation, we're gonna, when I refer to congregate settings, we're gonna focus on homeless shelters, adult care centers, feeding sites, prisons, detention centers, group homes, residential treatment facility, emergency shelters, reception centers. All of these may encounter different situations in terms of, the detection and mitigation of infectious diseases. However, there are standard control measures that can be taken. Next slide. So I'll start with the types of infectious diseases that we may encounter in congregate settings. Again, the examples that I'm going to give are just a few examples in the very big and wide realm of diseases that we can encounter. However, I'll just provide examples on the most common diseases that we can encounter. So respiratory illnesses, of course, we're familiar with COVID, but I really want us to start thinking about other diseases that are not restricted to COVID-19, that may be similar transmission, but also are of public health importance. So, if a person is negative for COVID-19, it doesn't mean that the person does not have a contagious disease. Right now in Delaware, specifically during the flu season, we're seeing a lot of respiratory viruses circulating in the community. So we want to make sure that all of the mitigation actions that we're implementing in these settings, apply for COVID-19 as well as for other diseases as well. So for respiratory diseases, we're looking at different modes of transmission, droplet transmission, which is more bigger, heavier, more dense particles. Airborne transmission are tinier particles that can be spread through air. And then fomite transmission, like I said, is just transmission via inanimate objects, utensils, surfaces, etc. Next slide. And another group of diseases that we're also looking for in congregate settings, which can be highly contagious, are gastrointestinal diseases such as norovirus. Norovirus is highly contagious. You only need very, very few viral particles to get infected with norovirus. So we definitely want to take a look at, individuals that are having nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, all these symptoms. And I think this is the importance of noticing symptoms prior to diagnosis. If you have a large group of persons or maybe two or more individuals that are presenting with similar symptoms, that should raise a red flag. That should say that there's something going on here. Is it a virus? Is it something that's contagious? Is it something that is related to a common source, food source, etc. So we're looking at two main, and the reason why I provided these two main examples, norovirus and hepatitis A, as you can see, the incubation periods are very different. So one is a very quick incubation period. Within 24 hours, you can get infected and you can start showing symptoms. Hepatitis A, on the other hand, is a longer incubation period. So in a population where we are dealing with a transient population, where we're dealing with persons that are moving in and out of a facility, it's very difficult to identify an outbreak of hepatitis A, for example. But it is of particular significance in this community because of the fact that it's associated to high-risk behaviors such as injection drug use, homelessness, etc. So I think we also need to keep an eye on that. Next slide. So rash-related illnesses. I mean, this is a very wide term, but if we encounter a rash-related illness that is contagious, it definitely raises a red flag. We're seeing vaccine preventable diseases such as measles, varicella, and the famous mpox, or formerly known as monkeypox, where that could create very severe outcomes for vulnerable populations. In vulnerable populations where we're seeing lower rates of vaccination for measles, varicella, mpox, we want to make sure that we are identifying these diseases very promptly and just notifying health authorities quite quickly. These diseases, some of them may be confused with other conditions such as scabies and bed bugs, which are not less significant because they can spread very quickly in these settings. But it's important that we have a differential diagnosis, that we have a clinical perspective on, what the rash-related illness is, and what are the implications for public health. Next slide. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of control measures and what we can implement in the congregate settings for respiratory diseases based on the mode of transmission. So cohorting is something that applies to I think every mode of transmission that I provided as an example. And cohorting is a very basic way of mitigating the spread or preventing the spread, which is really grouping persons to limit the spread of disease. If you have an adult daycare situation where you're seeing a high number of adults and you're seeing high transmission rates in the community, you may want to implement cohorting. You may want to create little groups of four to five persons or residents where they go to lunch together, they do activities together, and then that way, if a person becomes sick in that group, then transmission is just restricted to that small group. So that's pretty much the principle of cohorting. Isolation, we know about isolation for COVID-19, but it also applies for other respiratory diseases such as influenza, tuberculosis, and other respiratory viruses. So we have for COVID-19, it's a list 5 days after the onset of symptoms. And then for influenza, you need to isolate for around 24 hours after the resolution of fever. And in individuals that do not necessarily have a fever, it's 4 to 5 days without after the onset of symptoms. And of course, physical distancing or social distancing, as we the more popular term, it's also proven to be an effective way of mitigating the spread. Next slide. So just to continue discussing control measures for influenza, there's also testing, which is it's critical to identify which pathogen is causing. I mean, every pathogen, like I mentioned before, it has different incubation periods. So the period of communicability, or the period where the person is contagious, it changes depending on the disease. So testing is really important to try to identify how long the person is contagious for, what is the incubation period, and what are the implications for public health. Masking has been proven to be an effective mitigation or control measure during high community transmission periods. So what shelter managers or facility managers can do, they can watch out, they can look at the statistics, they can look at My Healthy Community, which is the DPH website where we have our statistics for COVID-19 and influenza, and they can see how are the COVID levels or influenza levels in the community. Are we seeing high transmission rates? Yes, then that may mean that you may want to incorporate or implement these masking, hand washing, and pretty much education within your facility. Again, hand washing and disinfection of environmental surfaces, that's really important, and it's a very basic control measure. Ventilation in closed areas. I mean, if you have a high group, a high volume of persons in a closed setting, you may want to improve ventilation. If ventilation is not something that's doable or realistic because of the fact that it's very cold outside, then try to limit the number of persons in a closed space. And then vaccination, which is the gold standard, I would say, for mitigating the spread. There's a new booster the bivalent booster, and then we have the seasonal influenza vaccine. Next slide, please. So for GI illness, again, the basics of the control measures are pretty much the same, cohorting, hand washing, but with GI illness, you may want to look at another, from another angle, through another lens, and this meaning food safety. So in situations where you have feeding sites, where you have a catered event, or you have a person providing food to the community, you may want to consider if persons are falling ill continuously or around the same period of time, you may want to think about a point source, as we call it in epidemiology, which is a single source, right? So is it a water source? Is it a food source? Was it a sick food handler? Proper preparation and storage? Was the food sitting out for a long period of time? So that's also part of our investigation. When we look at GI illness, we think about person-to-person transmission, but we also think about food safety as well. And it's important to know that norovirus, which is a very common virus, can remain in feces up to 2 weeks after recovery. So ongoing disinfection of surfaces, even after the outbreak is over or the cluster is over, is critical to maintain people healthy. Next slide. In terms of rash illnesses, again, the same thing, cohorting and immediate isolation of sick persons. And I would be more concerned about rash illnesses that are not scabies or not bed bugs, because of the implication, like I mentioned before, vaccine preventable diseases can cause, very severe outcome in vulnerable populations. So it's important that we immediately isolate individuals that are showing signs of a rash illness and haven't sought care. So testing as well. It is very important to identify which pathogen is causing the disease, whether the disease is contagious or not, whether there's a risk to public health, there's a risk to either, facility staff, other individuals within the facility, and for the public as well. Let's say if the person is homeless, for example. Clusters of vaccine preventable diseases or other rash related illnesses are very important to be reported to the Office of Infectious Disease Epi. We provide recommendations, suggestions to facility, and we support facility managers through a potential outbreak and deciding which next steps to take. Next slide. So our Office of Emergency Medical Services and Preparedness, they developed this very cool resources for facility managers, homeless shelters, etc. And this is the first page of a checklist that we created, but it's around a 10-page document, and I can share that with Sophia at the end of the meeting so that she can distribute to all of you. But it really aims to provide, to empower facility managers to make decisions themselves and to identify whether there's something that's concerning to public health going on in their facility. So we provide guidance on what an outbreak is defined as, 2 or more cases of COVID-19 in a period of 14 days. That may raise a red flag, right? So 2 or more cases of suspicious rash in the past 4 days. That may also be concerning as well. So we provide, sort of a quick checklist so that you guys know which information to collect prior to calling us and determining whether public health support is needed. Next slide. So other diseases in congregate settings, these are not necessarily infectious diseases, so it's not relevant to this presentation. However, it is something that we have seen get reported often in situations where there are congregate settings, like nursing facilities, assisted living facilities, homeless shelters, emergency shelters. Scabies is a condition that can be spread very, very quickly. And it represents, it's very annoying disease to have. So I think it's something that we really need to mitigate early to stop the spread and to reduce the impact in public health. Our DPH Health Systems Protection Office is the office that manages all of the recommendations regarding scabies and bedbugs. So their contact information is there. And again, if you have any questions about those two conditions, you can reach out to infectious disease as well, and we can help you out too. Next slide. So I wanted to provide information on where to report, how to report. So our Office of Infectious Disease Epidemiology is where we handle around 90 plus conditions that are reportable by regulations by Delaware Health Code Title 16 to the state of Delaware. And our phone number, which is a 24/7 phone number, you may see that in the slide. And we also have a general mailbox, which is monitored 24/7. Which is reportdisease@delaware.gov. It's good to sometimes be a little bit conservative in terms of, whether you're unsure if you need to report this to public health or not, if you need support or not, give us a call and we'll provide the recommendations that you need. Next slide. And then in terms of other state resources, our Office of Emergency Preparedness, they provide homeless shelters with COVID-19 testing kits every month. Our preparedness epidemiologist, Molly Dworkin, she's in the process of, she actually led the creation of these documents that I showed you, the checklist, the screening tool and everything. So she has been working closely with homeless shelters to visit them, to provide outreach. They provide the checking list, and they also provide other resources as well. And I can share all of those with you all in this meeting for reference. In terms of access to care, Delaware has state service centers in all 3 counties for underserved populations, and then community health centers or federally qualified health centers are also available in all 3 counties. In terms of substance abuse or crisis help, there's 1-833-9 HOPE DE, which also provides resources for individuals, especially mental health and behavioral health. Next slide. Yeah, so I think that's all I have. Here are the references. Again, if you have any questions and any are in need of additional resources, I'd be happy to help. Again, my office, we really like to receive those calls from facilities eager to know how they can mitigate the spread of infectious disease in their facilities. I think that it's very important to establish those partnerships. So I'm very grateful. It's not, I don't want to say that there's anything positive about COVID-19, but at least the silver lining was that we were able to create and strengthen those partnerships with our community and homeless shelters and facilities. So that's something good about it. So I'm reading here. Can you put the slide back up? Contact info. Okay. Can you, I think it's one slide back. There, yep.
And we will make sure again that this information is available. Thank you so much, Camille, especially that one little package you had, that would be incredibly useful. So we will make sure that this, if you do miss it during this, we will make sure that this information is available, all the materials and the meeting folder as well for reference afterwards.
Okay, sounds good. And I have to head out to my other meeting, but any questions that you have, feel free to send me an email via Sophia or directly. I'd be happy to help. Thank you all.
Thank you so much, Camille. Thank you again.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. Alrighty, we are lots of presenters with lots of meetings today. So we actually have Mia Harvey from West End Neighborhood joining us next. Mia, are you okay? You should be able to go ahead and share your screen to get started.
Good morning, everyone. I am nice and cozy. I'm actually on vacation, so this week, so excuse my non-professional dress. And can everyone see my screen?
Yes, I'm all good on my end.
Yep, we can see it.
There we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Mia Harvey. I'm the Program Director of Education and Employment at West End Neighborhood House. I am going to be discussing our workforce readiness program. I thought this image was perfect because I believe that we build a strong workforce in what we do in our program. We offer an 8-week workforce readiness course. Each week we tackle one of these topics. During our career exploration and mapping week, we utilize such tools as a career compass and some of the tools offered by the Delaware One Stop. During our SMART Goals week, we love SMART goals because they're actionable goals. So they're not just sitting there like, oh, I would love to be a veterinarian. No, we're actually making actionable, tangible goals and steps to help them achieve them. Then we do digital literacy. We primarily focus on information literacy and career search skills during that week. Then we transition to our occupational skills training. During that time, they're able to choose and sometimes complete their occupational skills. So they're able to leave our training with a credential. During employability development week, we focus on communication skills development, time management skills, work ethics, and stress management. During our hard and practical skills development, we focus on critical thinking skills, decision-making skills, self-management, motivation, and integrity, flexibility, emotional intelligence, perceptiveness, emotion regulation. I'm sorry, I started talking about our interpersonal and emotional intelligence development week. But we also talk about critical thinking skills, decision-making skills, self-motivation, and motivation. And then we transition to employment in week 8, where we take all of that wonderful stuff that we learned throughout the 7 weeks. And then we take that and we apply that into transitioning to employment. And then we also do resume creation and updates via our resume workshops. We prepare for an interview, such as your attire. We put together portfolios for our students. We talk about what to do after they're done their interview, what to do if you do or don't get the job, because, can't win them all. We also talk about what to do to maintain employment once you get it, such as conflict resolution, anger management, patience, adaptability. And then they also meet intensively with the employment specialist that helps them transition out of our program into the jobs of their dreams. Some of our occupational skills trainings
quick question, and I'm not sure if you're going to get to it in the later in the slides, but we did have a question in the chat. Who is eligible to participate in the workforce course?
So anyone is eligible. Anyone that is in the workforce looking to get a job is eligible. Obviously, if someone doesn't want to get a job, just don't send them our way. But anyone, we service individuals as young as 16 up to whenever they want to, work. We do not have a cap. We are funded through the Department of Education and Department of Labor, as well as the Environmental Protection Agency. Department of Labor funding is split between 2, which we get youth funding and adult funding. Youth just says, hey, we'll pay for all these certifications for 16 to 24-year-olds, where our adults say, we'll pay for all these certifications for anybody 25 and up. But so pretty much anyone 16 and up is eligible for all of this.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. So these are some of our certifications that we offer. Customer service and sales specialist. We have our Serve Safe food handler and our Serve Safe manager. We also have the ETIPS alcohol service server certification, tongue twister there. We also do the CPR first aid, AED, pediatric and adult certification. We also have our forklift operator and our warehouse logistics specialist. I didn't have room to make it look pretty, but we also do OSHA 10 and OSHA 40. We can do that as a standalone certification as well. And we are working on offering CDL certifications. We're probably looking at launching that in the new fiscal year, which will be July. And we are currently looking on doing a small type of warehouse operator certification where someone will come out with 3 certifications, which is the warehouse logistics, the forklift, and the OSHA 40 certification. That's currently in the works, and we're looking at launching that around the springtime. So we're all about work and getting in there, but we do know, especially since we do service some young individuals, that people just aren't ready to jump into the workforce just yet. So we do offer wonderful paid internships. For our youth, we offer internships of $15 an hour. For adults, $17 an hour. It's just to kind of get them out there. We typically put them in placements that are aligned with their career paths that was established in the first 2 weeks of workforce readiness. So someone decided they wanted to be a veterinarian. We've partnered with the zoo, we've partnered with Faithful Friends. So different places, we've partnered with recording studios, Brandywine Counseling. You think of it, we will place someone there. It doesn't matter. We will find a way to partner with a location to place someone. So we do have a variety of site locations, and it is integrated and aligned with someone's work readiness class and their career pathways. And then, of course, job placement assistance. So after they're done at 8 weeks of workforce readiness, and after they're done, they can do 3 months of an internship. I am just super tongue-tied today. They can do 3 months of a paid internship. They are finally ready to transition to job placement assistance, which includes the resume workshops, meeting with our employment specialists, whose entire job is focused on building connections with a variety of different employers so we can have a streamlined hiring process. And that hiring process looks like she literally takes their resume, sends it to an employer, coordinates the interview, they go interview, they get the job. It's literally that quick. We've had individuals that met with the employer 1 week and they start working the next. It's an extremely streamlined process. So we typically say, if you have someone that wants to work, send them our way. If someone isn't really sure yet and they need some time to figure it out, we encourage them to do our 8-week workforce readiness class to kind of explore a little bit, to see what they want to do, fill out some different things. But we also do job placement assistance as a standalone thing for individuals. And that's for individuals just ready to jump into the employment. Our wages start off at $15, $18 an hour. Obviously more if they have a certification. We also host biannual job fairs, typically in the spring and the fall. We also have a free 4-week environmental training program. This is one of our more popular training programs, especially some of the re-entry population tends to love this program. All these 12 certifications someone leaves our program with. We have employers that meet with the trainees during that 4 weeks and offer them conditional offers of employment, wages starting off at $19 an hour. They typically make $20 an hour within 6 months. We've had some employers that actually start off with $24 an hour. These are jobs that offer employment. Offer wonderful benefits as well. Some of the employers is Lewis Environmental Services and Clean Harbors. They send these individuals all over the country to do a lot of environmental work, remediation, and so forth. It's just a really great program. It's extremely fast-paced though. They do a week of workforce readiness as well. So we do soft skills development. They do 3 weeks of hardcore training to get all of these certifications completed. And then we do a week of them meeting with employers. They're meeting with employers, and then they're meeting with the employment specialists. And then typically by week 6, they are employed. So it's a completely rapid program, but they love it. And we don't just do workforce readiness. We also do GED and adult literacy. Digital and financial literacy are also standalone components as well. Everyone gets comprehensive case management here. We also offer mental health services through community partners, post-secondary transition assistance, food insecurity assistance, housing assistance, childcare, which is before and after care, summer camp, and entrepreneurship assistance as well. And then There's my contact information. And then our website, which shows all of the wonderful services that our entire agency offers, as well as anything that falls under my department, which is education and employment. And we do orientation every Monday from 9 to 11. And then an individual will roll right into programming on Tuesday.
Mia, I do have a quick question.
Yes.
Is there a specific referral process or application process? So if we have providers that want to like send people over, or give them the program's information, would that be on the website, or how do they access that?
So there is an actual, like, I want to say it's a link on for the EPA program, because that is the only program that's not year-round rolling. There's cohorts. There is a link to register for that because it's different. Like it's different from all the other programming. There is a link on the website, or you could literally just send someone our way. Our orientation to actually sign up is every Monday from 9 to 11. If someone was to call, pop up here, if anyone was to email me, we don't turn anyone away. We are definitely client focused. So we would never be like, oh no, it's not, it's not Monday. We will definitely get their information. We will give them an application. We have like a streamlined application. It's literally just one page. So we would definitely get them to fill out an application and enroll them into programming. So we kind of made it super, super easy for anyone to start programming immediately.
Awesome. Once in the programming, so I know a lot of people who work in case management in the sector, people have jobs already, they have kids, they have crazy schedules depending on like when they need to be back to the shelter or the housing program. Do you guys work or try to provide the same level of flexibility with the orientation once they're actually in the program, or is that pretty set?
So we used to do we used to do all of our programming 100% remote for some individuals. We found out it was the worst thing we could ever do. However, to address that, and literally we just stopped it in December. But for the new year, so we don't offer our programs 100% online anymore. We do offer some flexibility with hybrid. But what we are doing is we are partnering, so we're now starting to partner with different agencies. I actually have to reach back out with one of the local shelters. We're looking to bring our services to different places. So we found that it's difficult for individuals to do like our GED classes at home, or in a shelter. So we're trying to do it where we're there, so they at least have that supportive staff on site somewhere and accessible. Like currently we're at the Route 9 library twice a month. So if there's anyone in that locality that needs that hands-on support, there's an employment specialist there. There's a GED instructor there. There's a case manager there that can actually get that hands-on support, because sometimes it's just so difficult to do it virtually. So now we're just kind of like working on bringing our supportive services to the actual community. This year, we're focusing on being out in the streets more and being in the community more and doing a lot more volunteerism. So you guys are probably going to see us a lot this year.
Awesome. And any of that information, please
It's
feel free to
302.
send.
That is a typo. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the area code number, yeah. But yeah, any of the information or updates that you guys have, or if you have a schedule or plan of where you guys will be at certain times, please feel free to send that over to us as well. So that way we can share that with all of our contacts in the community. We would love to help assist get the word out there for you guys.
Yes, I definitely will. And then on our page, we do have a calendar as well. If you go on our West End page under the education and employment, there is a calendar as well. So we will be updating that with what we're doing. So you guys can see, because I think our first like department event next month is our Love for Learning. So we're doing a readathon. So we're also doing like our own department-wide events as well. So I'll just definitely just keep that posted, but I'll also make sure I share what we have going on as well.
Awesome. And we would also love to hear about any successes or anything like that that evolve out of those partnerships in your guys' programs as you ramp it up throughout the year.
Yes, I will definitely. We have a newsletter, so I'm used to sharing a lot of that stuff. And I'll especially share because I oversee our Adopt a Family program too. So I definitely make sure I will share that information because I start that in September. So I definitely will make sure I will share that as well because I will be looking for families in September for that.
Awesome. We actually have a annual meeting that occurs in October. So if you would potentially be wanting to provide some information at that meeting about the Adopt a Family program, we'd love that as well. All right. Well, thank you so much, Mia. We really appreciate it. I believe we are just waiting for Matt from the Social Security Disability Office to pop on, and he will be providing the Social Security updates for 2023.
Good morning, I'm here.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
Yeah, he hopped on. He snuck on there for us with the phone number. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. So good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Baxter. I'm Social Security's Public Affairs Specialist for Delaware, as well as the Eastern Shore of Maryland and Virginia. So I wanted to provide you a brief presentation, kind of focusing on some updates for this year, but also just some general information that you should have. So let's go ahead. Is the slide deck up and running at this point?
Yes, give me one moment.
Sure, let me know when you're ready.
We should be up and running now. Is everyone okay? Everyone can see my screen all right?
Looks good.
Okay.
Awesome.
All right,
Matt,
sounds
you
good.
let me know and I'll next the slides for you.
Sure. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, let's move on to the next slide that should say, did you know? So in 2022, about 182 million workers paid Social Security taxes, meaning about 94% of the workforce is covered by Social Security. Next slide, please. These are the most up-to-date figures on the number of our beneficiaries. About 65 million, a little over 65 million folks are collecting Social Security, and about 7.5 million people are collecting the SSI benefits from the parallel program we offer. SSI, of course, is the needs-based benefit program. A couple things to keep in mind here. One is that you, me, and the rest of the FICA taxpayers out there are the ones who are funding the 65 million plus who are on Social Security. So our taxes are being used to pay out benefits to folks currently on Social Security. So there are slightly less than 3 workers for every 1 person on Social Security benefits, whereas the SSI program is funded through the federal income tax like the rest of the federal government is. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder here, we offer 2 disability programs. One is called Title II, or SSDI, Social Security Disability Insurance, and that eventually comes with Medicare. There's also Title 16, which is SSI, Supplemental Security Income. And in those states, including Delaware, if you qualify for SSI disability, you automatically qualify for Medicaid, even if you did not qualify prior to that. Next slide. Just a little information. I'm sure this is old news for probably all of you, but just so you know, a lot of people use the terms Medicare and Medicaid interchangeably. They are quite different. Medicare is the federal health insurance program for people 65 and older, as well as folks who've been receiving their disability benefits for 24 months. Whereas Medicaid is a state health program, although it is partially federally funded. It's for people with low income and resources. And like I mentioned, in most states, including Delaware, children who get SSI qualify for Medicaid. And in many states, including Delaware, Medicaid comes automatically with SSI eligibility. Next slide, please. Now, just as a reminder, to be found disabled, you have to have a condition or combination of conditions that will keep you from performing what is called substantial gainful activity, or SGA. It's a useful acronym to know. It's probably the most commonly used one within Social Security. So either you have a long-term condition or you unfortunately have a terminal condition that's expected to end in your death. Next slide. One of the updates for 2023 is in the definition of substantial gainful activity. It changes year to year. So right now, for any folks you're trying to help maybe navigate the disability program and they're trying to get awarded in the first place, the first thing we're going to look at is this person currently working? And if so, are they making more than or less than $1,470 of gross income? If the person you're trying to help is still working and making over $14.70, most likely their claim will be denied right off the bat without it being even sent on for a medical determination. However, there are exceptions. So let's say your person is making $2,000 a month. They're working at a company they've been with for 25 years, and they've just recently started having medical issues. Maybe the employer is cutting them a big break and saying, okay, we're going to have you do half the work you used to do. We're going to give you your full pay. If that employer would be willing to, state that in writing to us that, hey, this person's working at a 50% productivity level for 100% pay, we would discount that extra 50%. So that 2,000 would turn into 1,000. So that's one way a person making above the limits could still be considered. Also, if you have a client that is dealing with a lot of out-of-pocket medical expenses they have to pay themselves and that they're not being reimbursed for and that are required to allow them to work with their condition, if they can provide receipts of what they're paying for out of pocket, we may be able to deduct all those expenses from their gross pay and get them maybe under that $14.70 limit. But again, most times folks do not have a lot of out-of-pocket medical expenses that are not being reimbursed through health insurance, whether it be private or Medicaid or Medicare. And many employers either do not subsidize wages, or some that do will not put it in writing for us. So if a subsidization cannot be substantiated, or if the person has no out-of-pocket expenses, then we just go by their gross pay. If you have blind clients, be aware there is a higher limit in place. This year it's $24.60. So a person can be making close to an annualized salary of $30,000 if they're blind and still be considered for disability. Next slide, please. So I recommend any of you who are advocates for the disabled, whether they be on benefits already or trying to go through the program of applying and appealing decision, I would recommend that you familiarize yourself with the Red Book, which is our best guide to work incentives. It's really for those who are on benefits, is to show them, hey, there is this path forward where you are allowed to test your limits in the workforce without it leading to a termination of your benefits. A lot of people are very fearful if they go back to work even for a few weeks that all their benefits will be taken away, including their Medicare or Medicaid, and that could not be further from the truth. Now, I will say I don't think the updated 2023 guide is yet on the website. I might be wrong about that. It may have just been posted. But even if not, you can still start looking at the guide and just realize any numbers you see in there, any figures, they will be updated for 2023 shortly. But all the other information is still relevant today. Next slide. Just now to focus on what people who are approaching retirement this year should be thinking about. Well, there's a new retirement formula for those who are turning 62 in 1961. The only things that really change here are what we call the bend points, the points at which we give 90 or 32 or 15% of your income back, but the 90, 32, and 15% figures stay the same year to year. So this is someone born in 1961 who's aging into the program this year, who has averaged $84,000 in income in today's dollars, because we do adjust their earlier earnings for changes in the national wage level. So essentially we inflate the earnings that were made in your 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s to bring it up to your current dollar value. So this is someone who's looking out 5 years into the future when they're turning 67, which is their full retirement age, and they're wondering, well, how much will Social Security pay me if I wait until that point to get an unreduced benefit? Everyone born in 1961 at full retirement age will get 90% back of the first $1,115 of gross income they paid Social Security taxes on a monthly basis. They will get 32% back of their average monthly wages they paid Social Security taxes on for the next $5,606. And then for those who had average monthly income of over $6,721, they will get 15% back for anything over that amount. So with that being said, for any of you who are wondering for yourselves, for future planning purposes, what can I expect Social Security to provide me in terms of a replacement of my income from work? Bear in mind, we're not talking about a replacement of your most recent salary, which for many people is their highest ever at the end of their career. Rather, we're looking at your average annual salary over 35 years. So bearing that in mind, for most folks, it's about a 40% replacement of their average annual salary over the course of a lifetime. For those of you who have lower levels of income, you're going to get more than 40%. For clients of yours who only make $12,000 a year for 35 years, they're not going to get 40% back of their wages. They're going to get 90% back when it comes time to start collecting Social Security. And for those who are very wealthy and only pay FICA taxes on the first $100 and some thousand they earn every year, because there is a cap on the Social Security tax, they make it a fraction of 1% if they're making millions of dollars a year, because they will only get a benefit based on that first $100 or so thousand they pay Social Security taxes on. So everyone falls somewhere between a fraction of 1% for the uber wealthy out there and 90% for those who are the lowest income earners amongst us. But for most of us, it ends up being within a few percentage points of 40%. Next slide, please.
Hey, Matt, can we take a quick pause? We do have a couple of questions. One question in the chat is that income for only blind individuals or visually impaired individuals as well?
So it has to be considered statutorily blind by our standards, which I believe means, because it's been a while since I've taken one of these claims, I believe that the definition of that is 20 over 200 in the better corrected eye would be the best vision they have. So if it's if it's better than that in their better eye, then they would not be considered stat blind. If they simply have a visual impairment, they would not qualify for that higher standard or higher level of income.
Perfect, thank you. And then John John Whitelaw has his hand raised. John, if you
I'll
want to
wait
go
till
ahead.
he's done. I'll wait till he's finished. It's all good.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so I'm moving along here. Let's see. Where were we? Okay, so we're on the slide, working while receiving benefits. So if you're under full retirement age, you are allowed to make up to $21,240 gross if you are on a payroll, or if you're self-employed, you're allowed to net $21,240 after your business expenses are deducted. For every $2 you make over that, $1 of Social Security deducted from your Social Security benefit. So obviously, if you're 62, 63, 64, whatever it may be, you're under full retirement age. If you're making a really healthy salary, especially if you're making in the six figures, it would not make sense for you to necessarily file at 62 or 63, because most likely all of your benefits would be suspended for your excess income. But let's say you are turning your full retirement age this July. Let's say you're turning whatever that is for you, somewhere between 66 and 67 years of age. And let's say you are making a healthy salary. Let's say you're making $110,000 a year. Well, this year, because you're turning your full retirement age, we only look at the income for the first 6 months. If you're turning full retirement age in July, half of 110 is 55,000. That's less than 56. So you could, even making a six-figure salary, depending on when your full retirement age comes up and how high your salary is, you may be able to start the benefits in January of that year, although there would be a difference in benefit rates. It's about a 0.5% reduction for every month you take it before full retirement age. So, it'd be a difference between 97 and 100%. Also be aware of the fact that once you turn your full retirement age, even if you collected earlier than that, your earnings limits are removed at that point. Also, if you go over these limits, you might think of it as a penalty, but the reason why the 1 for 2 and 1 for 3 is not truly a penalty is that when you reach your full retirement age, your benefit rate will be adjusted for any checks we were unable to pay you in your early to mid 60s. So if you sign up at 62 and by full retirement age, you've had 10 checks withheld, you're going to get about a 5% benefit boost to your permanent benefit rate. And if you live long enough getting that boost, you'll eventually recoup those checks that you did not receive in the past. Next slide, please. Another concern of a lot of folks out there is how much Medicare costs and whether there's any special assistance out there for those who are struggling. So as you can see, in 2023, most folks are paying a slightly lower premium than last year. Last year was $170 and change. This year it's $164.90. However, for folks whose income was on the higher side 2 years ago in 2021, they will initially be charged those higher premiums. You'll see in those higher brackets, not just for Part B, but there's also a surcharge for Part D prescription coverage. The good news is that if the person has had a qualifying life-changing event since 2021 when the higher level of income was made, they can submit a request for relief of the higher premiums. The best way to request this relief is on the SSA 44 form. That is going to keep that person, that's going to allow that person to see all the information we need. They submit that to us, and as long as there was a qualifying life-changing event, we can use your estimate for your modified adjusted gross income for 2023 in place of what's on the record from 2021, granting you immediate relief. Now, if there has not been a life-changing event, you simply have had a drop in income, then you would not get that relief. Next slide, please. So for the folks that you're helping out on the other end of the spectrum, or if, you know, God forbid you ever find yourself in a position of struggle down the road in your own retirement, there is help out there for the prescription drugs, which you apply for through Social Security, either with a phone appointment, in-person appointment, or by submitting the application online. It can be worth up to $5,100 a year. It's only granted automatically if you're on Medicaid. So there are millions of Americans out there. There was a study done a few years ago finding that millions of Americans could qualify for this extra help, but they're not getting it because they either don't know it exists or they don't know how to apply for it. And unfortunately, I think a lot of their advocates and loved ones just assume, oh, if they qualify, they would just automatically be granted it based on government records. And it doesn't work that way. Unless your client is on Medicaid, they do have to apply for this extra help to get it. And then the best thing about this is that you can kill two birds with one stone. Within the application, you can provide us permission to share your financial data with the state government where you reside. Then the state will determine whether or not you qualify for the Medicare Savings Program, which can help pay for your Medicare Part B premium. And depending on how modest your income is, the state can even sometimes pay for your not prescriptions, but your doctor co-pays, co-insurance, et cetera. So that gets the ball rolling, so to speak, although you can obviously apply for the Medicare Savings Program separately. You can kind of get the process started and complete the process for the extra help with prescription drugs all at one time. Just be aware the state will likely have to follow up with you after receiving the report from us because there will be additional information they need from you. Next slide, please. Another big concern, I know this is probably top of mind for many of you as it is for, again, most Americans, is where is Social Security headed in the future in terms of finances? Because every year by law, our Board of Trustees has to submit a report to Congress on the health of our trust funds. And every year, because of that, we are front page news for at least a day or two. And usually those headlines don't look so great. This year probably saw some headlines saying Social Security trust funds set to exhaust in 2035. You may have heard that in the news as well. And the issue is a lot of people, they don't go beyond the headline. They just make certain assumptions. They see that and they think, oh, geez, the money's going to be gone in 2035. So I guess if I'm not going to be retired by then, I'm not going to get Social Security benefits after a lifetime of FICA contributions. There are even some of your clients out there collecting benefits who may be fearing that this means that in 2035, their benefits will be cut off because there won't be any more money to pay out the benefits. That is understandable if you're just looking at some basic information and just drawing conclusions from that basic information. I want to reassure you that is not actually the worst case scenario. It's not nearly that dire, although it certainly isn't great either. Let's talk about that potential worst case scenario in the next slide, please. So it is true. Well, let me first explain why there is money in the trust funds to begin with. There's a lot of confusion over this. A lot of people think the money is just kind of been set aside and that's the money that we use and that's that. It's not. The FICA tax is what we use on a pay-go basis. We take the taxes in, we pay benefits out, and we went close to 40 years starting in 1983 where we were taking in more in taxes than we had to pay in benefits. So the excess taxes were being put away in the trust funds for a rainy day, so to speak, and that rainy day arrived in part because the ratio of workers to beneficiaries keeps on narrowing. Back in 1960, there were 5 workers paying taxes for every 1 person on benefits. By 2035, there will only be 2 workers paying taxes for every 1 person on benefits. And that is partially due to the fact that the baby boomer generation had fewer children than their parents, so there are fewer workers to replace them as they exit the workforce. So because of that, we have started to have to dip into our principal of our trust fund for the first time since the early 1980s or late 1970s. And we will be able to continue dipping in, complementing the FICA taxes that are coming in to pay 100% of the benefits for about another dozen years until 2035. It is true if Congress fails to act to reform the Social Security Act by that time, that we will no longer be able to pay 100% of the current benefit rates. The worst case scenario as it stands is that we would be able to pay out what we're taking in FICA taxes, which would be about 80% of the benefit rate that is currently being paid right now. So if you or your client's getting $2,000 a month in 2034, you'd have to acclimate yourself for a cut of about $400 in 2035. That being said, if it's any reassurance at all, we actually did exhaust the retirement trust fund in the past. Back in 1981, we had to borrow out of our disability trust fund and Medicare trust fund until Congress was informed in early '83 that, hey, if you don't pass bipartisan legislation to get the Social Security trust fund rebuilt, we will have to start delaying or cutting benefits in July of '83. April of '83, Congress did pass bipartisan legislation that was signed by President Reagan, and that's the reason why your full retirement age is probably 67, whereas your parents or grandparents was 65. It's the reason why all federal employees hired January of '83 or later are paying into Social Security. It's the reason why every federally elected official representing you in Congress and the White House is also paying into Social Security. And it's also the reason why benefits are federally taxable depending on your level of income. And finally, it's the reason why we stopped paying children in college benefits if their parents were deceased, disabled, or retired. Now the benefits for children of folks on benefits or children of disabled individuals, they stop at age 18 or high school graduation, whichever is later. And then the only reason why you get benefits in adulthood on a parent's record is if you become disabled before you turn 22 years of age. So all of that is to say, even if Congress waits until 2035 or 2034 to take action, they will still be able to make some changes to rebuild the trust fund at that point. But obviously, the sooner they reform Social Security and start rebuilding the trust fund, the more modest those changes can be. So just be aware when you start hearing about legislation that may actually pass both houses of Congress and be signed by the president, make sure that you let your local elected official know how you feel about a future reform and how it may impact you and your family. Next slide, please. As far as how to file for benefits, you can file for most online. You cannot file for survivor benefits online. You cannot file for children's benefits online. Most offices are not taking disability claims in person right now because we are still working on a hybrid schedule where 50% or so of our employees work in the office each day, 50% work from home. So disability claims in most offices are being taken exclusively by telephone. That being said, there are exceptions to that policy depending on circumstances. Also, in most offices, we are now, with an appointment, taking retirement, spousal, Medicare, and survivor claims in person. The one requirement that is still in place, the one major difference between a trip to the office today versus before the pandemic is that as of today, as of January 18th, 2023, you are still required to wear a mask over your nose and your mouth for the entirety of your stay. Our employees are under the same requirement, and if you refuse to comply, you will be escorted out by the guard. There is a zero tolerance policy for not following the masking policy. As far as scheduling an appointment, you can either use the office locator at ssa.gov to call your local office between 9 and 4, or you can call the 1-800 line between 8 and 7 Eastern, Monday through Friday to schedule the appointment. We are not taking walk-ins right now for claims, again, with some very rare exceptions. So if you walk into the office to try to file a retirement claim, for instance, you'll be told by the front desk person, I'm sorry, we can't take your claim today. Let's try to schedule an appointment for the future. Next slide, please. I want to wrap up here with talking about protecting yourself from fraud and abuse. I believe I've spoken about this topic to you folks maybe last year or 2 years ago. That being said, just wanted to provide you some updated information. So the scam, by and large, has not morphed too much. Basically, what happens is you have people calling, Social Security imposters calling. They're claiming there's something wrong with your Social Security number or your Social Security record. And usually there's a threat implied. They say, if you don't call to address this, we're taking legal action against you, or sometimes they're even more blunt than that. They'll say, we will have you arrested if you don't call us back. People who do fall prey to these scam tactics call back, they answer some verification questions, and then they're told, oh, there's a fee you have to pay to resolve this issue. Go to the store, buy a gift card for X number of dollars, call back this number, provide us the gift card information, and we'll transfer the money off the card into the Social Security trust funds, and you'll be set to go. Obviously, the money goes directly into their pockets, and like cash, once that money is gone, it's probably gone for good. It's an international scam, so even our domestic police departments, FBI, et cetera, we're relying on our international partners to try to get this cracked down on, but it's still an ongoing concern. So next slide, please. The best thing that you can do is just share with your clients that there are two major red flags that indicate the call, no matter how scary the message is 100% a scam. Number one, we will never call and threaten you with legal action. Number two, we will never ask you for the purchase of a gift card. Even if you owe money back to Social Security, a gift card is not an appropriate way to pay that money back and will not be accepted by the office or the agency. If you owe money back to Social Security, you pay by check, money order, or credit card. So no matter, again, how scary the message may be, it's a scam call. Tell your clients to avoid it, to not call them back. That being said, if your client is not believing what you're telling them, say, well, at the very least, don't call them back. Go to your local office. Call your local office. Ask them, is there something wrong with my account? Am I under threat of arrest? Do I owe a fee? We will tell them, no, that is a scam. There's no fee owed. You're not in any legal trouble. Don't worry about it. Next slide, please. Scam awareness. Just in general, a couple of tips. Understand the threats, exercise caution, and secure your information. That being said, we do recommend, we appreciate, I should say, if you would report any of these scam calls using a form that our OIG has created. It's available on our website. Of course, it's voluntary, but it allows us to track the trends of this scam. Next slide, please. We just redesigned the website, our website in the past month. This is now what the homepage looks like. So now it's very clear where to go if you want to apply for benefits or sign up for Medicare. If you go through any of these other buttons like preparing for benefits, then most likely it's going to be redirecting you to establish a My Social Security account. So I do want to take a moment just to explain the value of a My Social Security account for any of you or your clients who are 18 or older. It doesn't matter whether you're working, disabled, not working, whatever it may be. If you're 18 or older, you should be establishing a My Social Security account. Number one, because it avoids, protects you against another type of scam. This time it's not one that's being committed by fraudsters by and large, or strangers, let's say, by and large. It's unfortunately being committed by people you know, like your ex-spouse or ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, or God forbid, like a drug-addicted grandchild or niece or nephew who is desperate to access your Social Security benefits. If you don't establish an account, then someone who has enough information about you to pretend to be you might be successful in establishing the account. So number one, you should establish the account to protect yourself from that kind of fraud. If you don't want an account, after I mentioned the benefits of it, what you can do instead is call us and have an electronic block placed on your account. And this goes for all of your clients and your, let's say, elderly loved ones who don't use computers. They should not just be sitting back and saying, oh, this doesn't apply to me, I don't use the computer. No, those who aren't going to have the account should put a block on their electronic access instead. Next slide, please. For those who do not receive benefits yet, you can access your Social Security statement. We only mail them out automatically to those who are 60 and older who do not have an account. So if you're 18 to 59, the easiest way to access your Social Security account is through the My Social Security, or I should say your Social Security statement is through the My Social Security account. That allows you to keep track of your earnings, make sure there's no employer fraud involved, because sometimes employers fail to actually send your FICA taxes on to us and pocket the money instead, so we get no report of earnings. This is your way of checking for that. If you see a year where you know you paid Social Security taxes and you're not seeing any earnings, you should be contacting us now, not decades down the road when you're filing for benefits, so we can try to address that with you. Also, very valuably, you can request replacement Social Security cards online as well. Here in Delaware, you do need a driver's license to use that feature, but you don't need a driver's license to set up the account. Next slide, please. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through this slide. This is some basic information about the Social Security statement, but I do want to spend a moment on the next slide, please, which actually shows you what the redesigned statement looks like. I do want to draw your attention to something, especially for those of you who have clients who maybe have young children. Take a look on the bottom right-hand corner on the right-hand side. You will see that there is a list of earnings, and you'll see the most recent earnings for this individual reported in 2020 of about $52,000. Now look on the left-hand side, the bottom left-hand side, and you're going to see the maximum survivor benefit payable to this worker's family. If this person has enough qualifying children and or a surviving spouse, the family might get upwards of $60,000 of gross income a year, which is typically for the children anyhow, not federally taxable. So there are cases where the gross benefit to the family can be higher than what the employee was earning. And then when you factor in that the wages were taxed at a much higher rate than the Social Security survivor benefits will be, the disparity between wages and benefits can be even greater. This is not the case for everyone. Not everyone leaves behind a bigger benefit for their family than what they were making at work. But that being said, it is a significant benefit for all families. All families should be aware of this benefit. Very few young people know that this benefit exists. And it's important for them to know that when they're making other choices, like how much life insurance to purchase their family. Next slide, please. Again, not going to spend much time on this, but for your clients, this gives them access to their My Social Security account. It gives them access to their benefit verification letter, their award letter, so to speak. This is the fastest way for your clients to prove their income. They can log into their account, click on the link for the letter, and print it out. They can also, in most cases, update their address, telephone number, and direct deposit. You cannot update direct deposit and address for SSI benefits because that can have an impact. That those kind of changes may have an impact on the benefit rates, living arrangements, et cetera. But for your clients out there who get Social Security benefits, they can make all those changes online. Even if you're on SSI, you can access your benefit verification letter, which is very important. Next slide. Again, I'm not going to spend time going through every single step one by one, but you guys will get a handout of these slides and you can refer to these when you're helping people set up accounts. We did change the registration process in September of 2021. So if you tried prior to that and were frustrated, you're not alone. Less than 50% of people were getting through successfully with the old registration process, whereas with the new registration process, it's an 80 to 90% success rate on your own. If you are having troubles, you can come into the office for assistance. And then finally, the last slide. This is an important link I would recommend that you share with everyone, your clients, your colleagues, your loved ones. This is a link to our regional calendar of events. Anything you see listed here is in the Mid-Atlantic, and it's either being conducted by myself or one of my colleagues. It is free and open to the public. There will be some virtual events listed there. There will be some in-person events. We anticipate, nothing is certain, but we anticipate that after we get out of this tridemic winter season, that most likely some of the travel restrictions we're currently under may very well be lifted. So you might be seeing a lot of us out in the community in the spring and summer, or at least more of us than you were seeing over the past few years, as we kind of dip our toes back into some more in-person outreach. So not only may you see us provide some presentations in person, you might see us at some large community events. Like we used to go to the Newcastle County picnic every year in the summertime. I forget the exact title of it, but it's for senior citizens living in Newcastle County. We would set up a table there and have brochures there, answer questions. So you'll probably see more of that, more of a resumption of that sort of activity as we move forward. So I apologize for going a minute or two over time here. I do want to turn things back over. I also want to provide my contact information. I know most of you are probably one way or another getting my emails through a distribution list of some sort. But that being said, if you're not on a list where you're getting my emails and you'd like me to add you on individually, you can either give me a call or send me an email. My telephone number is area code 302-450-2292. My email address is my full first name, Matthew, M-A-T-T-H-E-W, followed by a period, followed by my last name, which is Baxter. That's B as in boy, A as in apple, X as in X-ray, T as in Thomas, E as in Ernie, R as in Raymond, at SSA as in Social Security Administration, .gov as in government. So if you have any concerns on behalf of your clients or yourself or your loved ones, please contact me. I mean, one of the many hats I wear is being kind of an ombudsman for the community, where if you're having Social Security issues, you can come to me, discuss them, and then I will contact management directly. And though not always, depends on the complexity of the issue and what's going on with it, oftentimes within a day or two, management can take action versus you sending your client back to the office multiple times or having them call and be frustrated by getting different answers from different people. If you're getting less than satisfactory customer service from the local office and you have concerns or complaints, feel free to contact me directly with those concerns. So again, I'm going to turn things over now. I know we're past time, but if there are any questions that you have time to ask, I'm more than happy to answer those for you now.
Thank you so much, Matt. I'm going to go ahead and just stop my screen share real fast. If it's okay with you, I would love to put your email in the chat just so everybody has access for it. And then I do know that John, oh, thank you. And then I do know that John has had his hand raised, and I do believe we also had a question in the chat from Ms. Paulette as well after John.
So I promise to take 10 seconds only. If you have clients who are getting benefits and they get what I will call a nasty gram from Social Security that reduces or terminates their benefits, we do a lot of work in that space, and I would encourage anyone who's having a problem with their benefits to call us to see if we can help them. Dealing with SSA is incredibly complicated, and it frequently helps to have an advocate. And again, can I tell you we'll take every case? No, I can't. But do we do lots of these cases where people are, where Social Security is telling people they're not eligible or they're being reduced? Yes, we do a lot of work in that space, and folks should contact the office for whichever county they live in from Community Legal Aid. And that's all I wanted to hijack this with.
Thank you so much, John. Feel free, if it helps, you're more than welcome to also put your contact information in the chat as well. I also did include Matthew's cell number as well that he did mention earlier. And it does look like that one of the questions we had from Paulette earlier, this I think was coming back to when we were talking about the Social Security benefits, the 2035, and then you were saying some of the reasons why we were seeing that decrease was people were having less children than prior before. And I think Paulette was asking, do we also seeing the workforce dwindling because technology is replacing our workers? So Matt,
that's a great question. I don't have that level of information to say yes or no whether job market participation is also playing a role. I will just say, though, from the outside looking in with no stats to back it up, it would not surprise me if that's one of the factors. Because the main thing I wanted to stress, because I think sometimes when we present this information, it almost sounds like we're blaming baby boomers for having less kids than their parents. I want to tell you, even if it wasn't that, even if baby boomers had maintained the exact same number of births, live births as their parents did, that would have not entirely resolved this issue. We'd still be facing some funding issues. So it's a multifaceted issue. But one of the main things you can easily point to is declining birth rates, but there's more to it than that. And it would not surprise me if job market participation is also one of those factors as well.
Great,
okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or concerns for the moment?
I did have one more.
Sure, go ahead.
I work with the formerly incarcerated, and often if they were on SSDI disability, when they are coming out, there's a gap from the time that they come out to the time that they can receive the benefits, and they have no money coming in. Is there a way to expedite it?
So it depends upon, I mean, there is no way to expedite the payment because the payments, there's different rules depending on whether a person's on SSI or Social Security disability. And honestly, I don't have them memorized right now, but I believe for Social Security disability resumption, you have to be out of prison from the first day to the last day of the month, and then we pay our benefits a month behind. So conceivably, a person could be released in January 15th of this year and not receive a check until March. So there's no way to stop that from happening or to get the benefits sooner than that because that's prescribed by law. I think SSI, I believe it's a little bit different where I believe the benefit would be payable 1 month earlier, although I'm not 100% positive on that. As far as for incarcerated individuals, I know it's not the exact question you're asking, but for incarcerated individuals who may need to, let's say, reapply for SSI if they've been in suspension for too long and their benefits have been terminated, or perhaps they have never collected disability and they want to get the process started so that they get a decision as quickly as possible after their release. They may be able to start the process while incarcerated if there is a special agreement in place between the agency and the facility. They also may be able to file the claim over the phone or online if they're given permission to do so while incarcerated in like the final months before release. But unfortunately, in terms of the actual resumption of benefits and the timing of that, there's no way around that. There is one bit of good news, which I meant to share earlier, but I'll mention it now. There were a number of changes made to Medicare policies. And one of the big ones is that now incarcerated individuals will be given a special enrollment period and they will not be penalized for the time they were incarcerated. As many of you know who advocate for the incarcerated or ex-convicts, you know many of them go in, they lose their Medicare because they don't pay for it while they're incarcerated. And then when they come out, they've been told, oh, you have to wait for the next general enrollment period, which may be upwards of a year away, and you have to pay.
That's happened.
That's gone away. There's now going to be a special enrollment period in place for incarcerated individuals who did not pay for Part B during their period of incarceration. They will be provided immediate coverage, and they will not be charged any kind of a penalty as long as they provide verification of their dates of incarceration and they match up with the dates they did not have Medicare Part D. So I wanted to share that bit of good news.
The only other comment that I could also make is I think you need better education with the divisions of probation or any other state resources that are not familiar with the system, because when they go to access whether they're eligible for resources and they see that they're going to receive the monthly from SSD, they assume it's already in their pocket. And during that gap, then they don't qualify for state resources. That's happened too.
Excuse me,
I
I'm
appreciate
just
that.
going to chime in briefly. If you could go ahead and answer that or respond to that one question in like 10 seconds or less, and then I will also just move forward with all the presenters. If they could put their information in the chat again, if anyone has any questions moving forward. But if you want to go ahead in 10 seconds or less, just respond
Sure.
to Paulette's question.
Sure. So very briefly, I appreciate the feedback, and I will do my best to try to educate those folks on the fact that nothing is guaranteed and there is a process in place to get the benefits reinstated or to apply for the benefits. So thank you for sharing that feedback. I'll do my best to educate those communities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I want to again thank everyone for coming on to the quarterly meeting. To all the presenters, thank you again for all of your information. Again, please put your information in the chat so we can have it for any follow-up questions or concerns. Aaron or Rachel or Felicia, did you have anything before we adjourn?
No, Matt's presentation was the last of the day. And if anybody had any updates or announcements or anything like that, or materials to share, you can feel free to send them over to any of us on the team, and we can get those materials out as we send out the meeting materials to everybody.
Okay, I thank everyone again for attending. We are going to adjourn the meeting at 12:11 p.m. and you have a wonderful Wednesday. Take care.